Hi again, everyone. It's Alexander from the LSO for another day of 30 Days of Symphony. I miss all of you in La Crosse so much, and I, as always, hope that you're all safe and well. Well, B is for Bach, and B is for Balakirev, and B most certainly is for Béla Bartok, that great, great Hungarian composer, one of the great musical figures of the early 20th century. There is no official symphony by Bartok, but there is, of course, a work very justly beloved that he himself described as a symphony-type work. It's actually his last completed work, and it's from his famous sojourn in America. I'm, of course, referring to the Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. I'm always beaming with pride when I think of this piece because the Concerto for Orchestra was a work partially written in my hometown of Westport, Connecticut. Fritz Reiner, the legendary maestro of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and also, like Bartok, a proud Hungarian. He'd actually studied with Bartok years and years ago in his conservatory days. Worked very hard to make sure Bartok and his wife could find refuge in America. Bartok settled in New York, and Bartok always had an open invitation to Maestro and Mrs. Reiner's country home in Westport, where he could rest and rejuvenate. Bartok, by this point, was a rather frail man. He, unbeknownst to him, was dying of leukemia. But it was Fritz Reiner and Serge Koussevitzky, the great maestro of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, who joined forces to commission Bartok, this great, again, symphony in all but name. It is a work in 5 movements. Like several Bartok pieces, it betrays his obsession with architectural perfection. It is, if you will, in palindromic form, in that the center of the work's 5 movements is an elegy. This is a very Hungarian elegy, very sensual, nostalgic. It feels like an early evening in summer on the Hungarian plain. Many a conductor has rhapsodized about this central elegy slow movement. On either side of that, we have 2 dance movements, 2 scherzos, as we use that favorite Italian term. The first of them is what Bartok himself called the game of the couples. This is like music for an imaginary ballet in which Bartok is always throwing a spotlight on various pairs of instruments in the symphony orchestra. On the other side of the elegy, we get another kind of scherzo, which could not be more different. This one is very raucous and vulgar and burlesque, and shows that Bartok most definitely had a sardonic sense of humor. To begin and end, we get 2 amazing essays in what we call sonata form, one of those basic building blocks of symphonic music in which material is presented and then developed and then recapitulated. The first movement has a very tense, foreboding, slow introduction, and then a very strident, argumentative sonata allegro design, which I think Beethoven himself would have been proud to compose. And for the very last movement of this 5-movement structure, the finale of the Bartok Concerto for Orchestra, Bartok, as he would frequently do throughout his career, delves into his Hungarian, his Magyar folk heritage. We get this opening idea that we call in Latin a perpetuum mobile, this constant, non-stop, busy rhythm. And onto that, he layers on other additional ideas, and then you get very more serene episodes, and it's all whipped together in the work's final passages in a blaze of glory. So here now, one of the great symphonic works of the 20th century from 1943, Béla Bartok's Concerto for Orchestra, one of the other great Hungarian musicians of the 20th century, the great conductor Sir George Solti, of course, who succeeded Fritz Reiner eventually as music director of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, here in a performance on tour in Budapest in the 1990s with his fabled Chicagoans. Enjoy.